Hi, and welcome to the Still Rolling BJJ podcast. My name is Matthew Montgomery. I'm going to be your host for this project. This was born out of me messing around with AI one day, and I made a social media account on TikTok. And the first couple videos I did, I got a really good amount of feedback. A lot of people started following. The first video I did got basically 10,000 views, and I realized, hey, you know what? Maybe something that I said is a good message, and maybe it's resonating with people. And so I started thinking more about, obviously growing a social media channel, and I'm very much a white belt when it comes to social media content creation. I've used social media for a long time, but just as a personal page, never as any kind of like a public persona or whatever you would call it. But I've gained a lot of followers in the first month or two that I've had that channel. Little over 1,000, 1,200 people are following me and listening to me talk about jiu-jitsu related stuff. So then I had a couple of different people reach out to me about being on a podcast. I recently was a guest on the Old Man on the Mat podcast, and there's a couple others that have reached out that we may or may not get scheduled. But I started thinking, you know what? Let me do a podcast. I've been doing jiu-jitsu now off and on for about 20 years. I feel like I have a lot of perspective, even though I am a completely average jiu-jitsu practitioner. In fact, I'll tell you more of the story, but I'm going to tell you right up front, I am a very average blue belt. I'm not great. And I know you might be thinking, oh, great, a blue belt with a podcast. But I do think that I've got a good amount of experience and perspective, not just on the mats, but also in life a little bit. And, I don't know if you're watching the video or not, but my beard is gray. I've got 45 years on this earth logged already. And pretty soon I will have had jiu-jitsu experience for half of my life. So even though I'm not a world-class athlete and I'm not going to ever win ADCC or be invited to compete on CJI, I do think that I have a lot that I can give to the jiu-jitsu community from a sense of being a regular dude. I think for every elite IBJJF world competitor or champion, there's 100 other dudes that are a lot more like me than they are like those elite guys. I like watching high level jiu-jitsu as much as the next guy. I've watched the UFC BJJ, the first couple events and the series that they had. I watched CJI. I subscribe to Flow. I like the high level stuff. I just know that I'm not doing the high level stuff, and my game is basic, and I'm just getting older, right? So, a little bit more about me. I discovered jiu-jitsu about 20 years ago. I had been in the Marine Corps. I served in the war in Iraq in 2003. I was part of the initial push. I went with 7th Marines. I was in Baghdad when the famous statue came down, and so I participated in all that. And then I realized that jiu-jitsu might be something I'd be interested in, but my idea of what jiu-jitsu was when I decided I wanted to do jiu-jitsu is not what jiu-jitsu actually is, and I had a really kind of immature and rudimentary idea of jiu-jitsu. I wanted to get in jiu-jitsu because I wanted to fight. I was in my 20s. The Marine Corps had taught me a couple of lessons, good and bad, that learning how to fight on the ground is a good thing to have. I still think it's a good thing to have, but for completely different reasons. Now that I'm in my 40s as compared to what I was when I was in my 20s. So the first school I ever went to, it was actually a Japanese jiu-jitsu place, and I didn't know the difference between Japanese jiu-jitsu and Brazilian jiu-jitsu. But there were only a couple gyms in town in Columbus, because back in those days, jiu-jitsu kind of hadn't taken foot among the masses yet. So there were a lot of places, you'd be lucky to have a black belt in town, let alone several. Nowadays, obviously, it's much more well established. There's gyms popping up all over the place. Most schools have several black belts in their gyms at this point, as far as the well-established ones. But in those days, that wasn't the case. There was a gym up in Westerville, Ohio, called Gracie, Ohio, and I was on the opposite end of town, and then there was this other place in Hilliard, which was kind of where I lived, and so I decided to train at this Japanese jiu-jitsu gym, and I was doing pretty good. I was in my 20s. I was handling most of the guys that I was training with, and that being said, the black belt that we were training with didn't roll. He was an older guy, and we had one purple belt, one or two brown belts, and the yellow belt. The belt system was different, and then a whole bunch of idiots like me that didn't know what they were doing. So I was handling them, but I'm a big guy. I've always been a heavyweight. I'm 6'2", I was 6'3". I think I've shrunk. I'm 6'2" and about 245 pounds, and so was able to handle a lot of guys. Thought I was good at jiu-jitsu. Never training really all that much, but then I quit because I got actually hired by the Ohio State football staff. And so I joined that staff, and when you're working football at the college level, and shoot, even the high school coaches work too much. I was working 7 days a week, 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. Never left the football facility at any point unless it was my turn to get the coach's coffee or lunch or whatever. And so I didn't have time for anything else. So jiu-jitsu took a back seat. I was following this dream that I had in football, and I had two tremendous years as far as really cool experience that most people don't really ever get to have. With a major football program, we played LSU in a national championship game. We played Texas in a Fiesta Bowl. We won the Big Ten both years I was there. We beat Michigan both years I was there. I sang the alma mater with the team on the field at the Big House when we beat them in their place, and that put us in the that game actually cinched the Big Ten, but ultimately because we won that game, we had a chance and did get invited to go play in that national championship game. It was a great experience, but no time for anything else. So after a couple of years, I ended up leaving football. Football, like I said, it's a big schedule. So I went through some family stuff. I got divorced, and I had a son at the time, and still have the son. He's an adult now, but he was young, and I watched all these older coaches who had kids, and sometimes these kids would come in and they'd have dinner with us and the team or whatever, and I would kind of hang out with them because I was their age, and a couple of them were also staffers like me, and so one day we were having dinner, and they talked about how, Dad had never seen them play football, never seen their actual kid play football because they were too busy coaching, college kids and adults. And so me going through that divorce and realizing that, football and coaching was going to be hard on any family. It would be impossible if you were trying to do that as a single dad and still have any kind of a relationship with your kid. So I stepped away from football, and eventually I took a job as a defense contractor. That took me down to South Carolina, and so I was training out of South Carolina, a place called Charleston MMA. Now, I was training very, very sporadically at that time because I was traveling 200 days a year for my defense contract job. I was traveling all over the U.S. It took me overseas, and so I had a really busy travel schedule. A couple of times I would take a gi with me when I would travel and drop in here and there, but I also didn't understand at the time what it took to actually get any good at jiu-jitsu. I didn't understand the consistency, and I think I had some things that I had to do growing up, and maturity things that I needed to square away to really kind of put any kind of a focus on any single thing. Even though in my head I loved jujitsu, I loved jujitsu from the beginning, I didn't get what it was going to take to to level up or rank up or actually get decent at this art. And so training there, it was a great school. A guy named Casey Callias was the black belt coach there. He was a Gracie Baja black belt out of Atlanta, but he had moved to Charleston. We weren't Gracie. This was not a Gracie Baja school, but great instruction. I met some of my first really good jiu-jitsu friends while I was training at Charleston MMA. And I'm hoping that maybe I can pull some of these guys in as guests as this podcast keeps going. So I trained there for a while, and then I moved to Idaho. I had some family reasons. I was going to have my son come and stay with me, and I wanted to have family around. I moved up to Idaho, and I started training at a place called Combat Fitness, and Combat Fitness today is SBG Idaho. I have tremendous respect and love for my friends that I had there. Jesse Brock, Scott Tometz, those guys are first-class coaches. SBG Idaho has grown. I was actually able to visit recently and dropped in and saw some of my old training partners and friends and coaches, and it was really cool to see them. If you happen to listen to this podcast and I mention, you hear me mention SBG Idaho, that is your sign to go and check them out. They have tremendous people there. Can't say enough, and I'm sure that if you listen to this podcast, you'll hear me say more about them. So I started training there, and I was getting my ass kicked. Every class, the time that I had, I could go to a noon class based on my work schedule, and I was getting my ass handed to me every single class, every single round, every single minute of every single round. It was rough. It was a competition class, and that gym had guys that were fighting in Bellator and the local circuits, and Scotty Jorgensen's another guy that started that gym. He's a UFC vet. But we had guys that this is what they wanted to do, is they wanted to be fighters. I myself thought that I wanted to be a fighter going in, but I was too fat, slow, and injured, and lacked any kind of a focus or direction in my life. I was going through a lot. And so, it wasn't any good. So I ended up getting into a motorcycle accident while I was in Idaho, and that took me off the mats for a while. I was actually in the hospital for about a month, and I had to do a lot of healing, not just my body, but mentally and emotionally, as I was struggling in life with divorce, post Marine Corps PTSD. I had some injuries while I was in the military that I had to deal with, and eventually would have surgery to fix. There was a lot going on, and so again, I found myself in a spot where I had this idea of what jiu-jitsu was, and I had an idea of I wanted to do jiu-jitsu, but again, there were a lot of other things that I was figuring out in life, and then obviously major hurdles that kept me from training. And so I dealt with things. I went and took care of a lot of my personal issues, and worked hard on myself to get myself into a spot where I could get back on the mats. I eventually did leave Boise, and I found myself back in Ohio, and I started training, and I went back to school, and I'm finishing a bachelor's. I'm going to try to knock off an MBA next, but I started training again, and this is 2015 when I came back to Ohio, and then I found myself taking breaks from jiu-jitsu because I was raising my son. And I was dating, and I ended up meeting a wonderful woman, and eventually we got married, and I adopted her son, and I've coached both of their, both sons' baseball teams, and have done the travel baseball, and did all the other things that you do when you're a dad, and sometimes jiu-jitsu took a back seat, and I'm going to tell you right now that that's okay. You don't get the time back with your kids. They're going to grow up no matter what you're doing, and if you're not there to see them grow up, then it's something that you will always regret because you don't get the time back. So when I've talked to other guys that are training, and they're like, man, I really got to take a break because my kid's got hockey or whatever that is, man, go take care of your kids, and do that. The mats will be here. You can come choke me later. So it wasn't until after COVID that really I finally kind of hit a point where I wasn't coaching any more baseball. My boys, were either grown or close to grown. Stable career where I wasn't traveling all the time. I wasn't gone all the time. And I had gotten my, proverbial shit together. I'd gotten my life together at a point where things were becoming a lot more comfortable. Plus I had the support of a good spouse. So I finally started training regularly, consistently. And what do you know? I started getting better at jiu-jitsu, and stripes, and the belt came, and just a blue belt. I'm still a blue belt. Like I said, I've been training a long time. I'm still a blue belt, and it's because I suck. No, it's not because I suck. It's because I was not consistent at any point in that jiu-jitsu journey for about the first 15 years. I would say I dabbled in jiu-jitsu is probably the best way to put it. It's almost, I imagine if I say, oh yeah, I've been training hard, I wouldn't say that I've been training hard for 20 years, but that might be what people hear when I say that I've been on the mats for 20 years. Somebody may go, that doesn't really compute, 20 years and you're a blue belt, and it's a consistency piece. I'm okay with that. I live with that. And frankly, I don't care about the belt. In the sense of time and whatnot. I understand what it takes to earn rank in this art, and I'm totally okay with knowing that I've put in a blue belt's amount of effort thus far. So I'm going to keep training. I'm not going to give up on this thing, and eventually, at some point, my belt will probably start turning a couple more colors to purple, brown, and black. But along this road, I've met a ton of incredible people. I've actually got an amazing lineup of people that have already agreed to be on my podcast. I've already recorded a couple episodes. I've already got a list of probably 20 other people that are willing to be on the podcast. And these are not just my, mat buddies. What do I have on my list of people? I've already recorded a UFC veteran and jiu-jitsu black belt. I've got the owner of my own academy, of course, but he's a 5th degree black belt. He's been teaching for 30 years. He's got basically the most established jiu-jitsu academy in Ohio for sure. I have guys that have won IBJJF Worlds and Pans and Euros and are elite world-class guys. I have a lieutenant general who is credited as being the godfather of modern Army combatives. He is the guy that helped bring jiu-jitsu into the hand-to-hand programming for our military. So I've got high-level guys. I've got, gym owners and whatnot. But I also specifically and purposely and meaningfully, I have guys that are regular dudes like me. I have blue belts on my list. I want to get a couple white belts on this podcast over time, because I think that they can give perspective. We used to talk about this in the military, where sometimes it's the private or the PFC that may have the best idea on how to do something. They're going to have some insight that maybe somebody that's been training for a long time either forgot about or hadn't considered, and who knows, maybe it enlightens everybody. But it also is it'll serve to be good reminders of how we need to be treating new people when they come in, because sometimes we can lose sight of what it was like to be that day one, first day white belt, or what is it like to be a woman that wants to come and train jujitsu because she went through some kind of a trauma or an attack, and so now she wants to learn to defend herself. They need to have access to jujitsu as well, and so that's ultimately that's why I want to do this podcast. The response that I got to my little social media channel is along those lines, where I'm kind of talking to the white belt and I'm talking to the new guys, and I'm encouraging new people to come and try jujitsu, because the benefits that I've received doing jujitsu, and I'm not going to say that it's a replacement for conventional therapy, but really jujitsu's been a therapeutic thing for me. It's helped me mentally. It's helped me be able to focus. It's helped in my problem solving skills and how to really focus and problem solve when I'm under pressure. It's fantastic for people that have been through trauma. It can be very cathartic. I'm actually working with and I'm an ambassador, a mentor, and I'm helping coordinate scholarships with a veterans nonprofit called the We Defy Foundation. And what they do is they get disabled veterans, and we call them athletes within We Defy. We get them involved in jiu-jitsu. We actually provide jiu-jitsu scholarship. We'll pay their academy for their training, but we will also provide a couple of gis or no gi if it's like a 10th Planet no gi facility. So we get them geared up and we get them tuition to go and train, because we recognize, veterans who train, we recognize all the benefits of what it is to do jiu-jitsu. I talked about this on the Old Man on the Mat podcast, where the friendships that I've formed in jiu-jitsu are the most similar to my military friendships, and I believe that it boils down to how these friendships are formed at the base level at the very beginning. It is based and formed in two of the most critical things that you can have in a friendship, and that's trust and that's respect. So if you trust that your training partner is going to let go when you tap, they're not going to choke you unconscious or break your arm. You have that trust right off the rip. First time you roll with somebody, you're trusting that when you tap, they let go. But you also have the respect that they're in there with you too. They're trying to learn just like you are. They're alongside you. You're probably wearing some kind of a uniform, and so you respect that you have this like mutual suffering happening, and they're alongside you, lining up before class. It's very similar to the military friendships. You trust that your military friends are going to have your back, keep their barrels pointed downrange, and hopefully keep you alive if you're in some kind of a combat situation. And you also respect that they joined the military as volunteers, at least in the U.S., to serve their country. They're in uniform just like you are, wearing the same rank, and so you have these two things, this trust and respect with your peers, that from that point friendships are formed, and I feel like there's friendships founded on those things. You're not going to find those very many places in the civilian world. So I'm grateful for the friendships, and I hope that I can spread some of that, especially among the veteran community, or anybody that is either looking for their tribe, looking for some sort of cathartic, physical activity, where they can bond with other people going through some similar stuff. And I've also found that, there's most douchebags don't make it through the first few classes of jiu-jitsu. Most people that train for any sort of real amount of time, tend to be good people. We all have problems. We all have our hiccups and hang-ups and all of those things. But I think most people that are training and that have committed to doing this thing that's hard and and can suck at times, especially when you're new because you're losing constantly. They tend to be good people. I think that if you don't have a healthy ego, you're not going to make it in jiu-jitsu, because it, boy, it sucks sometimes, because you can't figure things out. And there are people that you think, they're maybe smaller or weaker or whatever, and they just do whatever they want to you, in a kind way. And, obviously, keep it playful when you're rolling, but there are some people that, if not for jiu-jitsu, you'd have no idea that they could literally just move you how they want you, and there's nothing that you can do to stop it. And so you have to be okay with that, and you have to be okay with understanding that it's not wins and losses in rolls on a Tuesday night. It's more about learning and being a good training partner, and learning alongside your peers. It just happens we're choking each other. So that's what this podcast is going to be. And I'm looking forward to many more episodes with like I said, I've got a fantastic list of people that want to be on this podcast. And that was another thing that blew me away beyond the response that I got on the social media. It's been the response to people that I've talked out and reached out to, that are going to be guests on my podcast. So I'm going to say that that's it for episode 1 of the Still Rolling BJJ project. So if you've ever taken a break, or you've lost your momentum, or you feel like you're falling behind, you're not alone. You're still rolling, and that's what matters. So I would love it if you could please follow and rate and share the show. Check me out on TikTok and Instagram. It's at Still Rolling BJJ. I'll be releasing episodes once a week. Next week, I do have one of my jiu-jitsu buddies. Phil Grimes is gonna be my day one guy. He's my favorite training partner. I've probably trained with him and rolled with him more rounds than anybody else. The week after that, I've got Sam Alvey. Smilin' Sam Alvey, UFC veteran, karate combat, light heavyweight, and heavyweight champion. He's also a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, and we had a great conversation, about a 30-minute episode. That one will be. I've already told you about it, some of the people that I've got on it. Now, the next thing is if you're hearing this podcast, DM me questions. I would love to answer questions, especially from people that are investigating this art and are white belts. I'm a blue belt, so I'm not trying to teach technique here, right? That I'll leave that to the black belts and the instructors. But if you have questions about mindset and ways to improve, or how do you balance life on and off the mats, I'd love to have conversations. I'd love to answer questions, and so don't hesitate. Reach out, and that's it. And then as I rank up in this podcast thing, and I'm no longer a white belt, I'll probably add music and logos and all the other fun crap that comes along with having a podcast. But for now, I'm just hoping that I'm a voice that resonates with you. So again, Still Rolling BJJ. Come check me out. Thank you very much.